Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Jim Sanders, environmentalist and farmer, owner of Wildflower Lane Farm in North Carolina. Jim has some great stories about how he got into farming and his fun and not so fun experiences with building a farming business. All along, Jim knew and was reminded by some friends that there has to be a better way, a more sustainable way. The existing system made small-scale farming frustrating and difficult. So Jim decided to take another approach to feeding local people. One day he had an idea. What if the money factor were removed from the business model? Jim came up with an idea that would enable him to do what he loved, growing food for people, while removing it from the business cycle that was proving to be unsatisfying. Organizations and nonprofits were paying wholesalers and retailers for fresh produce. What if those funds were shifted to pay local farmers who could grow for them instead? It made total sense, but would anyone buy into this? That's when Jim walked into the office of a local nonprofit called Table, explained his concept, and asked them to try it out with him. The executive director of Table, who you will hear from directly in an upcoming episode, after a little due diligence, was open to Jim's idea, shifted some funds his way, and took the leap of faith. And ultimately, this decision reaped so many positive benefits for Jim, Table, and most critically, the community members that Table serves. And every year, Table has shifted more funds to growing with local farmers versus purchasing produce, demonstrating the strength and impact of Jim's concept. In addition, other organizations have also adopted a similar approach by shifting their funds to work with farmers and local producers just like Jim. I am so grateful for farmers and creative thinkers like Jim, who are willing to just walk through that door and put their ideas out there. Jim's idea has had a direct impact on food security in North Carolina and beyond. This is also a testament that existing local organizations can and should collaborate and join forces, shift funds to local sourcing, and ultimately increase access to nutritious food for everyone. This is Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. Enjoy my inspiring conversation with Jim Sanders. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a little cold here, but
I was going to ask you, what's the temperature there?
Well, North Carolina, it gets crazy. It could be 40 one day and 70 the next. So, yeah, it's been nice. And then today's probably a high of 45 or something. So,
chilly.
Yeah.
A bit chilly. Okay, so I want to start, by talking about your before farming, because I want to talk to you about how you came into farming, what inspired this, because it's not something everyone wants to do. Give me a little bit about your history, however far you want to go back. I know you are from Long Island, so we share that in common. But just tell me, kind of your journey into farming.
Sure. Well, it probably started back in college about 50 years ago.
Wow.
And I wanted to be an environmental studies major. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I took some environmental courses and I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. The problem is there was no programs then.
What was it about environmental studies that attracted you?
It just seemed the movement was just starting then, around 1970. And it kind of put everything together for me. Like you get to be in nature, you talk about health. It seemed to make a lot of sense. It seemed like we were doing a lot of things wrong, but there was all these new people with new ideas coming out.
Okay.
So there was a lot of energy around the environmental movement then. But unfortunately, there was no degrees because there was no programs, no departments. So I quit after 2 years. And the funny thing is, I went to my advisor to line up, I guess, my program for the next year. And I said, I have news for you. And he says, well, I have news for you too. And so I went first. And I said, well, I'm quitting. And he said, so am I. And he handed me the first Mother Earth News magazine. It was a little paper thing. It was, I don't know, 30 or 40 pages. I said, yeah, I can't be an environmental major yet, but there are these people doing organic farming, and that's what really interests me. So I'm just going to quit and travel for a few years and visit these places. And he said, well, that's what I'm going to do too. And he gave me the Mother Earth News, and I'd never seen that before. And I was just kind of sold. I was hooked on it at first sight. So that's what I did. I've just been an environmentalist ever since. And the interesting thing is when I went back to get a couple of more degrees a few years later, there still wasn't an environmental major you could get.
Okay.
So they told me to get an industrial design major with an environmental studies minor. And I did that. And it turned out to be really good because I understood how the world works, like the industrial, energy dependent technological world. And they told me a lot of environmentalists are really well intentioned, but they don't understand the world well enough. Like some of these ideas are going to work and some of them aren't going to work.
Right.
So that was very helpful to get both sides. And then I always wanted to get a piece of land and live probably in a college town. So I moved to Chapel Hill about 40 years ago and bought some land when it was still cheap. And been gardening a lot. And then I started farming about 15 years ago because I realized if I didn't get this together at that point, like in my 50s, it was going to get hard to start. So I had a big push to get it going and just kind of jumped in. It was a part-time business. I live on about 24 acres. So I took about 1 acre and dedicated it to an organic farm. Just decided to see what I could do with that.
Okay. So what was that, the first year, what was that experience? Hey, it's Jen, your AgriTourist podcast host. I need to interrupt this podcast for a few seconds. I always want to support the people I interview. So if you're planning on visiting the Berkshires this summer and fall season, Dory Schofield, owner of Berkshire Farm Sanctuary and Save a Pet on Long Island, and myself have partnered up to help her create an Agra destination at her sanctuary. We are starting small with 5 exciting chocolate cocktail hours for all of you chocolate lovers out there. You'll start with a chocolate mocktail or a cocktail and indulge in some delicious charcuterie, plant-based of course. Then you'll be guided through a chocolate experience and learn how chocolate is made from bean to bar. Savor the tastes of real chocolate from all around the world and depart the farmhouse with some of your favorite chocolate bars in hand. Proceeds support all of Dory's rescued animals at the sanctuary. Remember, there are only 5 dates starting Saturday, July 5th, and once they're booked, that's it. So visit berkshirefarmsanctuary.org or heartbeatfarms.com to register now. Thank you for listening, and I will hand you back over to the podcast.
Well, actually, we have a really good program here. My first year, while I was getting my land together, I entered into a program called the Breeze Farm. It's named after a military guy, Colonel Breeze, who loved organic farming.
Okay.
And when he died, he gave his farm to NC State, which is an ag school. And the deal was you can have the farm as long as you promote organic farming on it.
That's
And
great.
if you don't want to do it, you can sell it and give the proceeds to an environmental group. But as long as you promote organic farming, it's yours. It was a couple hundred acres. It was a good sized farm. So they have like an incubator farm program where you can go for a year and you learn from existing farmers, you take courses, and then they rent you land. And usually a bunch of people do it together, so you become good friends.
Wow. That's a great
Well,
opportunity.
yeah, you jump in together, and there's people. All the teachers were small farmers that you find at the farmers market, and we'd have weekly classes, and then you write up a little business plan, and they rent you some acreage. So I rented a half acre, just kind of jumped in. At the end of the year, one of the reasons they started this program was that a lot of people were buying farms here. And then after a year or two, they realized they're not cut out to be a farmer. And they moved their family out to someplace way out in the middle of nowhere and bought this old farmhouse and then realized it wasn't going to work. So they said, why don't you farm with us pretty much for free? I mean, I think I paid $100 to lease the land. It was
Wow.
I think it was 150 with the course and the land. It was basically about nothing. So there was 8 of us who did that farming the first year. And by the end of the season, by the end of the fall, I was the only one who said I was going to continue. Uh,
What do you think happened with that? I mean, out of 8, 1.
um, well, they realized how much work it is. And then also the marketing is tough because they realized it was tough to learn this, tough to do it. And then you have to start off as an unknown, trying to market your stuff, and that's difficult. So I didn't know if it would work financially, but I just kind of had it in me that I had to do this.
Let
So
me
I
ask
kept.
one let me ask one question about the program. Is the incubator program still going on today?
Yeah, I think they stopped for a year or two with COVID, and they're back operating. And actually, they've opened up more land,
Okay.
and now they're encouraging people to stay for years to actually start your business there and stay maybe for a long time.
Yeah, my question for you is, like you're one out of 8 people that wanted to keep going. Do you think that the program is putting enough emphasis on the business end of farming? And what we're going to be talking about today, farming itself is tough, don't get me wrong. But then there's this whole business end and what you said, the marketing and just the connections you have to make and building something from scratch. Do you think that they put enough emphasis on that and teaching people the skills to do that at that time?
They cover it a little bit, but it's tough because farmers markets, the good ones, are hard to get into. It's very competitive.
Yep.
And probably the last people they need are the people just growing common vegetables. The easiest stuff everybody covers. So I couldn't get into the 3 good farmers markets. Then the thing you realize is when you go to any outlet, whether it's a restaurant or a market, they're already successfully buying and using their vegetables. So you have to come in as an unknown and say, trust me, I'm good, or I'm even better than what you have.
Right.
And this is my first year, so don't worry about it. And it's it's a tough sell.
Oh, it's a very tough sell,
And
definitely.
we have a very friendly area, though. I mean, all the restaurants are very open to this, but they probably already have their connections.
Right.
We did have one group here. It was called ECO, Eastern Carolina Organics, and they were designed to connect the small grower with the markets.
Nice. That's a good marketing opportunity.
Yeah. And they took me in. That's how I got started. They took a percentage for doing this, but
Okay.
then they got me into places I'd never get into. So I was selling at Whole Foods all over the state.
Yes, I noticed that. That's
Which
pretty,
I couldn't do.
yeah. And that would have taken, personally, if you tried to pursue that, that would have taken you a long time and a lot of hours
Yeah.
to connect to the right people and build that relationship. Because I worked with Whole Foods, so the former non-Amazon Whole Foods I worked with, so I know, I know what it took for smaller businesses to get in and then to grow
Yeah.
into the region. So that's great that you had that opportunity. Now, you became certified right away, right? In your farm?
Yeah, because my land
Organic.
had never been used. They
Yes.
give you the benefit of the doubt and they say you're organic.
Okay.
I had to write a letter stating that. It was no big deal. So yeah, I got it from day one,
Which is
and that
great.
helped because a lot of people are not organic certified.
Right.
That's probably what let me get my foot in the door is
Yeah, because like a Whole
had that.
Foods, you always needed that certification to be able to
Yeah.
be considered at the time, at least. I don't know the I don't know the current standards, but
Yeah, you need a minimum of 3 years growing experience before
yeah,
they'll even talk to you, which I
yeah,
understand that protects them.
yeah. Okay, so that first year you hooked up with this organization, you had your organic certification, and what happened that first year? So you're on your own and were you able, so you had this connection to business opportunities to sell your vegetables. And was it just vegetables that you were selling?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So what happened that first year?
Well, that's
How'd you
interesting.
do?
I did okay because there was a friendly guy at Eco and he liked me and he said, we'll look for holes in the market where there's a niche that's not being filled. So he gave me some tips.
Smart, very smart.
For instance, he said, don't even think about regular tomatoes because we're so picky. He said, we had a lot of angry people last year who brought us 100 pounds of tomatoes and we rejected them because they weren't
Wow.
perfect.
Wow.
And he said, so unless you're perfect, don't think about it. So, but he said, but if you do say mixed cherry tomatoes, nobody's doing mixed pints. So I did mixed and it took off. Um, so I had to
Amazing
keep,
how the right connection can
yeah,
really
and I
help
wouldn't have
you.
known that. So yeah, you gotta hunt around and get to the right people who are really right there on the ground, and they can
Yep.
tell you some valuable stuff. Um, so stuff like that. I think there was beets that people weren't doing enough of.
Oh,
So I
really?
filled the holes and I did okay. The interesting story about that though is my cherry tomatoes became kind of famous because I did a mix that most people weren't doing. So I had like 5 or 6 types in a pint. And I got my big break when Whole Foods told him I have the best cherry tomatoes they have because they were
Wow.
flying off the shelf because they were mixed. So I was, flying high with that. My first year, Whole Foods is complimenting me. So I went back and said, well, can we make an agreement? Like, I'll just grow all my cherry tomatoes for you. And that would really help me. And you can buy other ones too, of course, because I'm a small supplier, but I'll just grow all my cherry tomatoes for you. And if you really want to help local small farmers, that would be a big help. And they didn't want to do it. But they
Why?
said, I think they just didn't want to make a commitment that they didn't have to because they have so many people supplying them. And I said, but you say they're the best. Why wouldn't you want them? And they said, well, we just don't make agreements like that. But grow a lot more next year because we'll take them. So I grew like twice as many the next year, and they didn't buy any. And
Oh no.
so I couldn't sell them.
What,
And
why? What was,
well, I sell them to other people, but Whole Foods wouldn't buy them.
but what was
And
their reason for not buying them?
well, I would just get word back, oh, we're okay this week. So I went in undercover. I said, I didn't tell them who I was. I just went into the Whole Foods in Chapel Hill and I said, I've heard that there's these tomatoes that are really great from this Wildflower Lane Farm, and I want to get some. And they said, oh, yeah, we know about Wildflower Lane, but we're not buying them now. And, they didn't know who I was. And I said, why not? And he pointed to the display and he said, well, we're getting cherry tomatoes for half price now from Georgia. We have somebody who can't move their cherry tomatoes. We're buying them for half price. And he said, kind of confidentially, he said, when we get deals like that, the small and local thing goes out the window. He's basically
Yeah.
telling me what happened. So you get stories like that too. So you can
Wow.
do it, but you got to be clever in the marketing. The farmers markets, generally there's internal politics there. They don't want more guys growing simple vegetables because, and they also surprisingly didn't want organic because only about 10% of our vendors were organic certified. So if I came in organic certified, I'd have a leg up on people who have been doing it for maybe 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that weighs in, but it's not really talked about.
So in that year when Whole Foods did not purchase and you were producing a lot more cherry tomatoes, how did you successfully distribute that year? What did you do?
I sold some, but very, very cheaply, probably broke even. And I had some churches come in and just bring in volunteers. And I said, just pick them clean and take them. And they did that. So I got rid of them, but it wasn't the way I thought I was going to get rid of them. So, that's the other thing. Like you said, you're growing, but then you got to market. And that's where we can use some help.
Yep. So before we talk about what happened and your idea, did you ever, so before you came up with the idea that we're going to talk about today, did you consider CSA? What were the other considerations or things that you tried along the way, whether it was just a consideration or did you actually implement it and try it? Anything else that you had tried from a business marketing perspective? Distribution?
I went directly to a place called Weaver Street Market, which is
Okay.
like a local Whole Foods. It's a smaller version of Whole
Yep.
Foods. And they're more open to this. But I could only sell them small amounts of certain things. And they give you a wholesale price, which is about 60%, maybe less of retail.
Yep.
And that's hard to do if you're small. If you're big, you can make it work. But I figured selling anything is better than selling nothing. So I got to start
Right.
somewhere. I did a little of that, but you couldn't really get enough of a commitment and the consistency to make it work. Tried some local restaurants, but they were very friendly, but they were already doing it. You realize if they're already doing it with someone, it's successful. So why would they give up a successful relationship and take a chance on you? I wasn't in a good place to do a farmer's market stand, which could be good because that would be retail probably.
Quick question on the farmers market. Is it more because of your location that it wasn't a good option?
I meant a farm stand.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you,
there's not
okay.
enough traffic on my road.
Okay. That's what okay.
And somebody's tried it down the road and they really don't do much with it at all.
Okay.
So you got to be in the right place for that.
Yep.
What else was there? There
So
was,
you had said a CSA. Did
oh,
you contemplate that?
I found that was kind of hard to start with because you have to be so good. You have to have those 6 to 8 things every week. I know some very successful people now doing it. and they're making really good income on just 1 acre, but they're really, really good. And it's taken them probably 7 or 8 years to get there.
Yep.
And I didn't consider that because I knew it was so exacting. It was going to be tough unless you just did it for, say, a season or two. And you really, but to do that planning every week and to hit those numbers, and then you have to grow extra to make sure you cover everybody. And then you've got a surplus. I do think that's the best way now to make it, but you have to work into it.
Yeah, agreed. And you have to know your customer really well. I find I had a CSA for 3 years, and we were growing. Every year we literally doubled. But I actually tweaked it into a seasonal CSA because I noticed that you have your summer people who wanted the diversity, whereas there were then you have the greens people who loved the spring. So I actually did a spring, summer, and fall, and it became more effective because the people I was serving really enjoyed whatever they were getting. We also, because we were serving more of a middle class neighborhood, we threw a farm to table soup in there. We had a chef. So we created something around the needs of our customer base. And it literally was doubling every year because of that. So it's tough though, that, like you said, those 6 to 8, that variety, and making sure, and then you go out and you see that crop of the 6 to 8 is not going to make it, or it's going to need another week or two or something. And you're like, okay, what do I replace? Those farmers are, they have to really be on top of what they're growing, and there's a big timing thing there. But it can be very, it could be lucrative for a farmer.
Another issue is we have these huge CSAs now, like 10,000 members.
Oh, jeez.
And they're basically middlemen. They don't grow anything. What they do is they contract with all the farms around the state, and they say, we'll buy from you wholesale. They put it together. They're basically a big boxing operation.
Yes.
And then they sell it retail. The problem with that is they're undercutting the farmers. And so, like my neighbor down the road, he had 350 people in his CSA with a waiting list. And when this big commercial operation came in, it destroyed his business, and he went to under 50, and it wasn't worth doing anymore.
Wow.
And then they came back to him and said, well, would you like to grow for us? Almost like an indentured servant. It's like he went from growing retail and making a living to they put that aspect out of business for him. But they said, if you want to grow wholesale for us, we'll market your stuff as we put you out of business. On the other hand, you have like 10,000 customers who are getting local food, which is good, but it came at the expense of some people losing their business. So that's a mixed bag.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And how do you solve that equation?
Stuff to them too, but I didn't like it. And they didn't want to pay much either. They always want to pay me sometimes 40 or 50% of retail.
That's the part that's hard, because I just wish those people running that business, if they could embrace the bigger picture here, everyone could benefit. Like everyone could benefit from that type of scenario, but they're not treating it like that. Okay.
And, also they had more diversity, and also, like, say, when strawberries are coming in on the coast, that's early, you can get them, but then later on they get their mountain strawberries, so the window is longer.
Yep.
Diversity is greater, and the price was the same or cheaper. They'd throw in free delivery. So from the consumer standpoint, it's a better deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although their local farmer may not survive. And the guys who have survived, their customers get that, and they're very loyal. And they just say, I'm with you through thick and thin. And even if you don't have 6 to 8 vegetables this week, that's okay, because they get it. And they're very loyal. There's a farm near me where 4 people are working full-time on an acre and have a CSA that's working.
That's great.
So, but they're very, very precise. They're like artisans.
Well, as you said, 4 people working on 1 acre, that has to be very precise.
Yeah, they're doing like over 300,000 in sales on 1 acre. They're
Wow.
probably the top in the country. They're up there with like Connor Crickmore up at Neversink Farm or the Fortiers,
What's the name of their farm?
the local one,
Yeah.
10 Mothers Farm. You
Okay.
can find some videos on them. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
definitely want to
really,
look them
really
up.
good. They're probably in their 30s and they're very hardworking. They're probably one of the tops in the country.
Excellent. Okay. So talk to me about your solution.
Well, I was doing this part-time. I didn't need the money, but I liked making it a business because it kept me moving. Like
Absolutely.
the business then really makes you sharp because you've got to deal with deadlines and commitments and budgets. So I like that, and I could have kept doing it. It was kind of making me a little crazy, just the running around and the insecurity of somebody like Whole Foods buying one year, then they don't buy the next year. And even though I wasn't making that much money, so if I made whatever, it was okay. I didn't like something about it just bothered me. And I thought, and I had a friend helping me one day, and he said, what you're doing is great, but you need to do a different model. And I said, like what? And he says, I have no idea. This model isn't working, but I don't want to see you stop growing because you like it so much and you're starting to get good at it. And I agreed. It was like, yeah, I've tried all the options. What else? Let me just be open. It was in the fall. I was wrapping things up and I said, I think I'll just think about this winter. Actually, there is a way to make money at it too that we can get into. I agreed. I was going to keep doing it, but I had to find a different model. And then I was walking in town one day and I saw a sign and it said table feeding local hungry kids. And I thought that sounds interesting. So I just stopped in to see what they did. And it's mostly young women in their 20s, had a really good energy. They were very positive. They knew all the issues. Like most of my friends are getting older and they complain a lot. And these were young people who knew all about climate change and food and health. And their attitude was, let's do something. So I said, I like their attitude. And I said, maybe we could work a deal or I grow some stuff for you. Would you like to see my farm? And they said, well, actually, we've been thinking that we need to have a farm as like a demonstration place. Could we come tomorrow? And I was like very impressed, like, wow. I thought they were going to
Action. Yes.
file it away someplace and never happened. And they said, well, we want a few people to see it. How about tomorrow afternoon? And I said, yeah. And that was it. And then all these things start to happen, a lot of synchronicity. A woman called me up who was doing a yoga certification. And she said, I have to do community service as part of my certification. What can I do for you? And I said, do you know how to write a business plan? And she said, yeah. I said, oh, can you write me a business plan? So that was her community service.
Hey, that's great.
So all these things happened. It went one thing after another after another. Then a friend of mine said, could you hire me really cheap? I need work for a month. And we did a lot of work here. And one thing after another after another. We came up with a plan. They would give me $3,000 on about half an acre. And I told them I could give them back, at least 10,000. And they said, well, as long as you give us back 3, we're fine. It's an experiment. We don't want to lose money. And after about a month, I'd given them like $13,000 in produce. And we all kind of looked at that and said, well, I think this is working. So that year, they ended up giving me 4,500 and we gave them back 45,000. So it's 10-to-1 savings. And nobody got paid. It was just for materials. And we looked at that at the end of the year and we said, we think we're on to something. Like this was a feedback beyond what I thought we could get.
Where was Tables? I'm going to have a conversation with them, but separately, but where were they sourcing their food prior to this conversation with you?
Well, that's a good question because prior to me, they weren't doing produce. They
Oh,
were doing canned goods and boxed goods,
got it. Okay.
buying like pallets of food at wholesale prices,
Right.
and
Okay.
then the volunteers move them. And that was easy because you don't have to worry about perishable items. So my thing, and they might get a little produce once in a while, maybe like some potatoes or something that store, but that was what was new for them. Not only this, but the fact they were going to deal with produce. So now they do, I think 50% of what they give away is produce.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm the biggest supplier, but they need more. So now they're hiring local farms. So they're like a guaranteed outlet for the farm. But what's nice about them, and it's good for the beginning farmer, is that like if you say, I'll give you 100 pounds of tomatoes and you only have 80, that's okay. And if you have 120, that's okay. You can move them all because they'll just give them to more people. Whereas you do that with Whole Foods, you come in with 80 pounds and they kind of say, if you do this again, you're fired, basically. Like
Yeah.
100 is 100. And then the weeks where you have 120, you say, would you take these extra 20? I'll give you a discount. And they say, no, we just want 100. And so you have to grow 150 pounds. And then you end up with 120. And then they want the best ones. They don't want the seconds.
Right. Right.
But what's so good about this is for these farmers, a lot of them are new farmers, is Table will take everything they have. So that's fantastic. There's no lost produce. And if it's not perfect, that's fine because people getting free food are not picky. So it solves the local farming. Like I would have loved to have done this when I started because you come up with estimates, but if you're plus or minus, that's fine. And also if your produce is not perfect, that's fine. The other part of this is not only getting food to people who need it, but promoting the small farmers who now can get some of their income guaranteed pretty much. So our figure was about 10% of retail. That's with no one getting paid. And then a couple of years later, Table gave me an employee half-time. And that raised the ratio to 20%. So now we grow at 20%. But if they want, they keep saying, why don't we pay you something? I said, I'd rather not get paid. I like it just being a service thing. But the other thing they could do is they could take, say, a retired farmer, someone like me, and pay them a part-time wage. And that would probably bring the total up to 30% of retail. And that would mean the farmer gets paid and they get a helper and the materials are paid. And that's still half price of the best wholesale you'll get. So it's
Yep.
still a great number. And you could employ some of your retiring farmers and your new farmers. Whereas even like a Whole Foods has good aspirations, they're not going to do that. So I
Yeah.
like this model a lot.
So right now, your relation, how many years have you been working with Table at this point?
I think this is the 7th year.
Wow. Congratulations. That's terrific. So 7 years later, what is your current like relationship with them as far as what's your model with them? You have an employee from them that helps
Yeah.
you, and what production are you at with them?
Um, Last year they gave us $26,000. I think that was about 10 for materials and 16,000 for the part-timer. They work 20 hours a week for about 10 months.
Okay.
And they pay them what's called a livable wage, which I think is somewhere around 18 to $20 an hour now. Um, and she puts in 20 hours, I put in 20 hours, and the volunteers put in 20 hours. So we figure on 3/4 of an acre, we need about 60 hours a week. And out of that 26,000 total budget, we gave them back 130,000. which is 5-1, exactly. So they came in at 20%. And that's a nice feeling to say we give away $100,000 free and clear every year for having fun, basically. Because I'm having fun at 20 hours a week, 4 hours a day. We find if you spread it around, everybody just has fun. Nobody
Right.
really works here. They just have fun. And the average volunteer comes once a week for 2 or 3 hours. And they usually say it's the highlight of their week.
Yeah. Now, you manage the employee, and do you pay, like, does your farm get the money and then pay the employee?
No, Table does
Table,
that.
okay.
That makes it much easier because I
Yes.
didn't want to start a new business with one employee.
No, yeah, I know. Well, because
It's
then,
too
yeah,
weird.
that's an expense for
Yeah,
taking on that management and payroll and all that. That's an
right.
expense. So Table does that, and does Table manage the the volunteers that come and the
Yeah.
hours they come? So they kind of manage that whole piece.
Yeah, the way it works is if you wanted to do this, you would go to the Table website, look under
Okay.
volunteer opportunities, and then you'd see my farm as one of probably 5 different opportunities.
Okay.
And then you sign up, and then I think you have to sign a liability waiver if you
Yep.
got hurt or something.
Yeah.
And then I have crop insurance here, the Table pays for. It's very cheap. Um, so we have liability insurance covered by Table. I cover crop insurance. And then when you sign up, you get my number, and Table tells me every week, here's who's coming, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Here's how many people are coming. And that's the most helpful is the weekly volunteers. And the other group we get is the one-time service groups, like churches, university groups, service groups, Boy Scouts, Girl
Right.
Scouts, YMCA, and they want to send like 5 to 10 people for 3 hours. And that works well too, because we get them planting a lot of stuff in the spring.
Right. Yeah. 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 When everything's moving out. Yes. I remember
Yeah.
those days.
So that's when people want to get out is in April and May, and that's
Yes.
when we need them the most. So that
Yep.
works pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, and we have all kinds of things you can do. So the spring is the big push, and that's when most people want to come out.
Okay.
And we have Chapel is very community minded. So there's all kinds of community groups doing all kinds of things. And then there's the university, which has like 25,000 students. Then there's the hospital. I get a lot of doctors and nurses come out here, and MPH students. So this is a very community-oriented community, which helps
Excellent.
a lot.
So with Table, has the money they're investing, the money that they're getting, that they're investing into you, has that over the 7 years, that's grown over the 7 years, basically, from what you're saying,
Yeah,
and your production back has, significantly grown. So they are actually not only working, like you said, with you, now they're working with multiple farms in a similar fashion.
yeah. Almost all their produce is local,
Okay.
and I guess they're paying wholesale prices to the other people. I don't know. But what makes it so good for those other people is they know they can move it all.
Right.
And when they sell more, they're rewarded. And if they don't have enough, they're not penalized. And that's been really key in getting them started.
Right.
One of them is called Sankofa Farms. And that's basically an African American guy who wants to teach young African American kids to farm. Another guy has kind of a religious perspective. He's trying to get people coming out of prison to farm. And he's mentoring, they're both mentoring new farmers.
Wow.
And I don't think they could be doing it unless they had groups like Table helping them. So
Correct.
it's really
Absolutely.
great in a lot of ways. Another population that's really, I think this is the best work in the world, is for people in recovery, drug or alcohol programs. Um, I think getting your hands in the dirt is the best therapy in the world. And we have some people coming out from those programs. And also, if we could give them some food, that's great too, because it's the best food in the world, hands down.
Yep.
And the other thing that people are amazed about is that, when you study where food comes from, like Food Miles, Table has kids' summer camps that are food camps. And they'll send them out here for a day and they'll pick food and make food and deliver food. And they teach them about things like food miles, how many miles your food travels. They really decrease the food miles. The kids get a lot out of it, and college kids get a lot out of it, especially during COVID. This was a real hot spot to come to because you didn't have to wear a mask.
Yep.
And the kids were going crazy on their computers 10 hours a day. This was like the perfect thing for them. And I think the recovery thing and the good food you can get from it is huge in that process.
Agreed. Table obviously is a big component here. Have you replicated this with any other organizations that have either come to you and said, hey, we like what you're
Yeah.
doing, or have you gone out and talked to other organizations?
Yeah. Well, I figured once my model was up and running, my next goal was to mentor other people. 2 or 3 years ago, a group came to me because of an article in the paper, and they wanted to do the same thing. So I'm mentoring them. They're in about 10 miles away. And there's another great group in this town called Porch, and they're kind of similar to Table. Although what Porch does is they give you a food box once a month. And they also give you a credit card once a month for food. It's like a food credit card. I think it's like for maybe $50 or something.
Okay.
Go to the local Harris Teeter, which is a big store here. And they've come to me. I give them sometimes some overflow because sometimes I have too much for Table, and I'll give them some. And the deal I made with them is you come out and pick it and it's yours because they don't give me any money. So I say, if you want to pick this area, go pick it, and they
Yep.
take it. And now this new group approached me, and we got them started with a farm about 3/4 of an acre, and they're just dealing with Porch only. Porch was a national model that was started by 3 soccer moms in Chapel Hill. And they have an interesting story too. Table is called Table because it was started by a college professor who put cookies on a table outside her house. And the kids all started grabbing the cookies. And then they said to her, can we give some cookies to people who are hungry? And then they did that. And then they said, well, maybe we can give like real good food to people who are hungry. And they started serving 6 students who needed food. That's how it started about 15 years ago. And now it's 1,250 families. Porch started the same way. These 3 soccer moms were at a soccer game, and they found that 30% of the kids were food insecure in Orange County. And so one of them said, well, my neighbor needs food. So they grabbed some cans of food, and when he wasn't home, they put them on his porch. And they would find out whenever he wasn't home, they would sneak over and put some cans of food because he wouldn't take them probably
Right.
face to face. That's how Porch started. I'm mentoring them, and we're going to sign a contract with the county, I think next month, to start a 3-acre farm in town. That's right in town.
Wow.
They have a county park of 200 acres right on the outskirts of Chapel Hill. And we're going to take the first 3 acres, which is an open field, which will produce like 4 times more than I do, put that in on the county property.
So who's going, when you say we, are you running that farm too?
I will be, yeah.
Or is that the other 20 hours of the week?
Yeah. Well,
So
I
you
like
went from
doing
a
this so much.
part-time farmer to a full-time farmer.
Well, I'm retired,
That doesn't
but
mean anything these
doesn't mean
days.
anything,
I don't
right?
like that word.
Yeah. I'm having so much fun with it that
I
I
love
don't
it.
do much traveling anymore, or I don't go out that much. I'm happier and more fulfilled doing this than almost anything I can think of. It doesn't seem like work to me. The thought that now on this 3 acre plot, if they got about as good as I am in a few years, and I'm pretty good, but I wouldn't say I'm great, they'd be producing about $600,000 worth of produce per year on a budget of about maybe 100, 125. And then we would bring in schools. We would start clubs at schools where you have like a farming, gardening, food, health club. Maybe 2 days a week you watch documentaries and you get lessons after school, and 2 days a week you go and work at the farm. It'd be like sports for people
Right.
who don't
Yeah.
want, because most people can't go out for sports. They're not good enough,
Yep.
but you want to do some exercise. So we'd start like a farming club or a
So this
non.
is fully funded by the county.
Well, we're dealing with the bureaucracy and it's hard. I wish it was a private farmer, because in 5 minutes we would have a handshake deal.
Yeah,
It's taken months.
I know.
The advantage is when we do get approved, it'll hopefully be forever because the county park will be there forever.
Right.
When they see what a resource it is, they would probably never want to replace it. So it takes longer. But then again, if I was going to lease this land from a local farmer, so many farms get bought out and made into suburbs. Like this whole county was farms, and they pretty much all sold, all the dairy farms at least, to become suburban
Same
neighborhoods.
thing with Long Island.
Oh yeah, yeah, Long Island, unbelievable.
Okay, so now let's say I'm a farmer, I'm a new farmer, and I have half an acre of land that I can farm. How would you mentor me? What would be the key? What would I need to do to create this model? Like, what are the key ingredients that I would need to go look for? And let's say I'm not in your neighborhood. I'm in New York, upstate New York, or wherever. Like, what would I need to look for to create this similar type of model and be successful with it?
You mean the model where you're not trying to market the stuff,
Correct.
like what I'm
Where,
doing?
look, I'm new.
Yeah.
I don't want to go sell it right now. I might have a farm stand or something like that, and I want to work with my community. I need to cover certain expenses and stuff. Kind of this model you have with Table. I mean, what would you, how would you direct me? How would you mentor me to what would I need to really think about in looking for a partner in, that type of opportunity?
Yeah, I think there's two things. There's the growing and then there's the distributing. And the food relief groups are really key, because if I didn't have them, I couldn't do this. I guess I could just drop the produce off at some place, but the food relief group is more important than the growing, because in any community, you can always find somebody like a master gardener. You don't really have to be a farmer. You could be, but you could also be a really good gardener and
Yep.
just get big. The food relief group is really key, and the better it is, the better the operation is going to be. I think you could create a job for yourself just, gradually by saying, um, if you are buying produce from somebody, consider buying it from me and it'll be cheaper and I have to get paid something. And also you could sell some at like a farmer stand, or, you could maybe have one or two crops that you do grow commercially. Like if a local market, like I had Weaver Street Market, said, well, we like your peppers, maybe I would grow commercially just peppers for them and make
Right.
something. And then maybe make something at the farm stand, and then make something as the paid employee for the food group. But if you can show them the numbers, I think that really convinces them. And that's why I've kept very good records of every year how we've progressed, because that's what they want to know.
Yep.
And when they realize that they're getting it for way, way below even wholesale, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. Technically, you're shifting the money,
Yeah,
and getting more for your money.
yeah, yeah. You're shifting your money and you're probably getting double or triple your produce for those
Right.
dollars. Because probably the best they would get would be that around that 60% wholesale figure. And you're coming in at 20 or 30%. So that's the model we're trying to create, and we're very aware of the numbers because that's what makes it work. When you say to someone, I took $25,000 last year, but if you said, well, we gave them $30,000 back, it's kind of like, well, why are you even doing this? But when you say I gave them 130 back, that's impressive. And they want to know how you're doing that. So it's a little like a business. You have to sell it. You have to create a model, get people excited by showing them numbers.
And producing,
and
you
producing.
know.
And only stay with what they want and what's simple to begin with. I would say my model is I do the wholesale model, which is 5 or 6 items per growing season. And when I started, I had a farm consultant, and he made me promise him verbally that I wouldn't grow more than 5 or 6. Because he said, I know you have like 20 things you want to grow. And he said, you have to promise me you'll only grow 5 or 6 things per season so you can get good at them. And that's 5 or 6 things you have to master, not 20. And I would definitely stay with that.
I was going to say, did you commit to that?
Well, I did, but I had another garden where I grew the other 20. I didn't show them that.
I figured that.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. But
and you can't once you start looking at like seed catalogs and stuff, it's very it's very hard.
It's hard. The addiction is
yes
strong. So
that's funny.
I told them a few years later. Yeah, and then my spring and my fall are the same. Cold weather stuff. So like right now, I'm putting out 3 or 4 types of lettuce and chard and kale, collards, maybe some beets, and that's it.
Okay.
And then that's the same in the fall.
Okay.
And then in the summer, I go to cherry tomatoes, peppers, basil, cukes, and winter and summer squash.
Okay.
That's it.
So it is very focused, which is good.
Yeah. And you have to realize you can't grow all food for all people. Like you can really just do vegetables. You could do a little fruit, maybe some melons and strawberries, but fruit usually means bushes and trees and lots of them. So you have to kind of just realize you can grow certain things and target them and do them well and do lots of them. And that's what you can do.
Right.
And then the other thing is I'm saving them so much money from their produce budget, they can buy other produce. Like they do buy strawberries, but not local. And they have the money to do that now because they have the savings from my produce. It helps them in other ways. They can, or if it's non-perishable stuff like cans of soup or something, they have more money in their budget because of the savings here.
Right. Now, the decisions on what you decided were your 5 things, quote unquote. Was that also, did Table kind of have a say in that as well, based on the needs of their population?
Yeah. They had to be okay with it.
Yeah.
And then also there's stuff that's easy to plant, easy to pick, easy to maintain.
Yep.
So when people come out and they're picking chard and kale, I just say, pick the biggest 2 or 3 leaves and then move to the next plant.
Yes.
And that's about my training. It's about
it's easy.
And they usually have 1 or 2 questions, and within 5 minutes they're off.
They know what they're doing. Yeah.
Having a good time. The same with planting. Also, seedlings can be tricky. So I plant a lot of my seedlings, but I do give some of them to a seedling farm to grow.
Okay.
Like right now, I don't like growing them in January and February because it's too unpredictable.
Yeah.
So I'm getting thousands of seedlings next week from another farm that does that specifically seedling. And I don't have to think about it in January and February. And once it warms up, then I start growing my own seedlings.
Yep.
So I kind of, and
tough.
they're very cheap. I'm getting them for 6 to 8 cents a piece.
Oh, wow.
They're field ready. So you just pop them in the ground. So, you have to find out what they want, what you like growing, what you're good at growing, how much land you have, what the land seems to like. I found that cherry tomatoes are just so much easier than regular tomatoes, and they're either perfect or not. And the ones that are split, we make them into salsa. And So it's just an easier thing to pick
Yep.
and deal with. We kind of stay simple and easy. It has to work for both of us.
Well, it's exciting. So you're going to be working a lot of hours in the coming season.
Yeah. Well, we're going to train people
Yeah,
to be like field captains or managers.
that's great.
I'd like to get clubs in schools where a teacher sponsors it and then they can be the boss. And then they bring the kids out after school and we give them a certain portion of the garden so they can kind of claim
Yeah,
ownership. And then they want to get really good because it's theirs. Rather than just say, here's what we're doing today and we direct them all over, we'll probably give them their own plot and we'll tell them what to do and show them how.
yep.
But then they get pride of ownership. And then they can run their own numbers and do their own social media and do deliveries. You really incorporate them into it's also kind of entrepreneuring.
I was going to
They're
say into the business, the
yeah,
actual
they're
business of
learning business.
farming, not
Um,
just the growing piece.
yeah. And then also we're gonna probably in town do flowers and have them go to businesses and try to sell them flowers. And then either they would bring them flowers each week or it would be a you pick 'em place. And some we don't really have to we do simple stuff that we don't have to watch too much. That could maybe fund a lot of this. So there's lots of ways to fund this too, that once the community knows that, I think they would buy them.
Oh, yeah,
Like a local
absolutely.
restaurant saying, your flowers are going to be cheaper. We can pick them right before we put them out. And it's helping support this business. It's kind of a no-brainer that they're
And
going
it's
to,
local.
yeah.
You know, that's terrific. So I hope that comes
And
to
then everybody, once
fruition.
you get this going, all kinds of people pop out of the woodwork that you never knew before. Like just, there's a lot of synchronicity that starts to happen.
Yep.
I'll tell you, like last week, we got this new estimate on starting the farm in town, and it was probably $3,000 or $4,000 more than I thought. And I was just thinking, well, that's not a lot of money, but it's something. And then I got an email that morning from a guy who wants to start a fundraiser for us. And they go around to local restaurants and they create one of those coupon booklets where it says, if you go on this day and you get 2 hors d'oeuvres for the price of 1, something like that. And the people buy them for $25, the coupon booklet. And you're hoping that you're going to make your 25 back plus more. And that 25 goes right to table.
Oh,
And
wow.
he's already done this in Pennsylvania. And he just moved here and he said, I heard about you guys and I want to do this for you. It'll be a regular ongoing thing. And food with restaurants, it's such a nice connection. So they're going to start selling those, I think, in a month or two.
Great.
And that could be a permanent fundraiser that just goes every month. You buy a coupon booklet for restaurants for that month. But all kinds of things pop up when it's a community thing. Somebody asked me, what's the key? Because so many community gardens fail. Like they fizzle out. And in North Carolina, there's 3 reasons. It's June, July, and August. It's so hot here that, I told them in April and May, everybody in North Carolina is everybody's a farmer. Even people who hate the outdoors, they're all farmers in April and May. They want to get out and get their hands in the dirt,
That's so
for a
funny.
day. And then June, July, August, they disappear. It's hot and muggy and buggy. And then September, October is nice, but they found other things to do. And there's so many community gardens that fizzle out as soon as it gets hot. And I said, the reason this keeps going is we've tied it to a social cause. And so when you're in a community garden, you're thinking, yeah, I could go down there in 98-degree heat and do some weeding and come home with a couple of cucumbers. But maybe I just rather stay inside and watch the ball game. And they fizzle out. But we've tied it to a social cause and people feel good when they come here. And a lot of people tell me it's the highlight of their week. So, they may not come every week. And, we don't expect them to, but they keep coming back because they feel like they've plugged into something real. It's small, but it's something.
It
And that's what I
matters.
think keeps it going.
Yep.
And then you get a lot of group who require some sort of community service, and they want to promote that idea. I think the most fun thing for people is when they leave. We have no transportation costs because when people finish their shift, usually like 9 to 11, and they go back to town, we say, could you take some vegetables to table in your van, in your car? And we load it up. We give them the bill, and it's like $1,000 worth of produce, and they can't believe it. And they say, you mean I'm giving away $1,000 of produce this morning? And we say, yeah, and they're just blown away. And they're going to town anyway. It saves us a trip. That's probably one of the most inspiring things people do. And they love to do it. They always ask, what do you have for me to take back today? They're disappointed if we don't have anything. It's a really big aspect of it.
Yeah. Excellent. So I have to ask you, what is your favorite vegetable that you grow?
It's probably the cherry tomatoes.
I knew you were going to say that when you're out in the field.
I'm getting back at the man. I'm getting back at Whole Foods. So,
they are the greatest thing to pop in the field when you're hungry and you need that sweet treat.
Well, there's so much fun too, because like little kids, I have like grandmas and they bring their grandkids.
Yep.
It's so much fun to look at them. And then they like sorting them and putting them in the clamshells. And it's just really fun to look at.
Yeah.
And then everybody loves the sun golds.
Oh, yeah.
That's everybody's favorite. They're addictive.
Yes, they are.
So yeah, that's the most fun one. And then we take the bad ones and the peppers and we make salsa.
So whose recipe is that?
It's one I found online. It's very simple, but it's really, really good.
Okay.
I've also talked to them about maybe eventually some kids from school, like some high school kids could make that into a business.
That'd be terrific.
We have a fantastic community kitchen here. It's very, very well equipped. It was designed and built to start local food businesses.
When you say here at your farm?
Oh, no, it's in the town. It's in the next town. About 10,
Okay.
Hillsborough. And county commissioners took a long time to put this together, cost many millions of dollars. And the purpose is to be an incubator kitchen for food-related businesses that start here and hopefully stay in North Carolina, trying to keep it local.
Yep.
So there's opportunities there with this big farm in town to maybe do value-added product. And we thought of things like basil is made into a pesto that we last year we made pesto kit, because I don't make pesto because I have to buy like 5 or 6 ingredients in little quantities. So I thought, well, how about if I just gave people basil and I gave them all the quantities of all the nuts and the oil, and we put it all in one bag, and then you just dump it in a blender. So that was real successful, and we did that last year. And that could be a business that could sell locally. Once again, I think nobody's doing that, so stores might be likely to carry that. It's really neat because in like 10 minutes you have instant pesto that you just made, and nobody seems to be doing that. So there's ideas for local businesses. This is a very good community. So you need to be in a good community and have good food relief group and good groups that are community minded. That all helps.
Yep. I have one final question for you. Where did the name Wildflower Lane Farm come from? Is that the lane you're on?
Yeah, well, I built my house here about 35 years ago, and I bought the land and there was no name to the road.
Oh, okay.
There was no name. So I had to name it. And every time I drove up on both sides, it was wildflowers. So we named it Wildflower Lane.
Nice.
And then the farm came a number of years later. So
very nice.
That was it. Nobody else had the name, so it stuck.
Okay. Excellent. Well, it's very appropriate. So it's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time. I think that what you have created is very innovative, and I think is a model that, especially like you said, new farmers should be looking at. It's a great way for them to practice their skills while being able to have some type of income stream and serving the greater good of whatever organization they affiliate themselves with. But it is all about making connections. You walked into that table, that office, and you made a connection with them, and they were open to hearing that. They were open to this concept and were ready to, hear something like this and took action. So it took two parties being very open and innovative together.
Yeah, you just have to be open. Just don't be closed. And
Yeah.
And I think that this is an idea as time has come, because
Yep.
there's nobody who thinks local organic is bad. Everybody thinks it's great. And everybody knows that the inequality is really out of hand. And there's nobody who thinks that childhood nutrition is a silly idea or something.
Yep.
Everybody thinks it's great, and you're saving money in the long run if you take care of people up front.
Exactly.
And
well said.
The other thing is there's so many job descriptions. Like, you don't have to get down in the dirt. You could do social media, you could do the books, you can do marketing, you can deliver, you can do presentations. You don't have to know anything, or you don't have to be someone who even likes being outside. There's a lot of little opportunities. And I also encourage people to do it with a friend or do it with their family so they can have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Because we try to keep it fun. That's what keeps people coming back.
Yep.
And they feel like they did something.
Well, I hope you have a fun season.
Okay, well, good luck with everything. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Take care. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. So I was recently listening to one of the Grounded in Maine podcasts produced by Amy Fagan. The podcast is an open conversation about being mindful about how we show up in the world. It's focused on sustainability and how sustainability impacts every part of our life. What are some of the most important takeaways that people will get from your podcast?
One of the things that I hope that people will take away from the podcast is encouragement. Like, I want them to not feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to be part of the solution, because, there are a lot of sustainable, things that say sustainability or sustainable, like solar panels or organic cotton and stuff like that. Like, some things are just more expensive because they have that tagline. That phrase or whatever. But there are so many ways that you can be sustainable. You just have to be a little bit creative. And so I'm putting out all these ideas that what people are doing, just to put the thought out there that we can all be part of it without going broke.
So how can people find your podcast?
My podcast is wherever podcasts are found. It is just called Grounded in Maine. I also have my Instagram is where I am most active, and the Instagram handle is Grounded in Maine Podcasts.